I loved my time working at Disney and Busch Gardens and Silver Dollar City. Working at theme parks was some of my favorite jobs ever. But there were some things about working at theme parks that just plain stank. Theme parks were a blast. In all my years of working at the parks, honestly, they were probably some of my favorite, most fun things I've ever had the opportunity to do. I loved my time at them and loved almost every moment. But like everything in life, there is nothing that is perfect. I did have a few very bad days. They were rare. I could count them on both hands within 10 years. But they did occasionally happen. Like every job, there were some things I didn't like. In fact, there were some things that I just plain hated, but you put up with for the sake of the job. Now, this is not a whining video, so if you're looking for a whole bunch of whining, you're not going to get it. But there are some things that just aren't necessarily real good when you work at a theme park. As an example, holidays. I worked most holidays when I was working at the theme parks. That's just one of the things you do. In 5 years at Disney, I worked at least 3 and I think actually 4 New Year's Eves, which meant I wasn't home with my wife or someplace else celebrating with her. I was at work at the park. 4th of July's, I spent at least 2 or 3 4th of July's working at the parks, which meant instead of being with my family and barbecuing and setting off fireworks, I was helping at the park. Christmas Day, I worked at least 2 Christmas mornings and 1 Christmas evening. There's actually a picture of me on Christmas Day watching my kids open presents while I'm sitting there in my Disney costume waiting to go to work. And on one of those Christmases, my kids actually had to wait to open their presents until late in the afternoon when I got home from work. Can you imagine being a kid and having to wait all day to open your presents when they're sitting there? My kids had to do it. That was one of the deals with having to work at Disney. It meant my Christmas Day got booked with work sometimes. Part of being at theme parks is you just expect to have to work on holidays. There are other jobs that are far more important that also work on holidays. I'm grateful for our firefighters and policemen and EMTs and doctors who work. But a lot of times you don't think of a job at the theme park as being in the same realm. After all, it's a low-paying job. But think how many people want to go to the theme parks on the holidays, and somebody's got to be there. It's just part of the work. You expect it to happen, and you expect to lose your holiday so you can let other people have a great holiday instead. One of the other things that really stinks, literally, about working at a theme park is being outside in the heat. Florida is just plain hot all year round. With the exception of a couple months in what they call winter, you're just going to sweat. If you're outside, you're going to sweat and sweat a lot. And depending upon what you're doing, it may be even more. Busch Gardens, when I was driving those Rhino Rally trucks, it could be 110, 120 degrees in the truck. And you're in it for an hour straight, sweating like a dog. Disney, you be outside, running around, working in the heat, taking pictures while you're sweating like crazy. Silver Dollar City, we'd be in the woods and it would be hot and we'd be sweating while putting on the show. You'd come home a lot of days, just covered in filth and sweat and stinky by the time you got to end the day. I felt bad sometimes for guests who would sometimes catch me near the end of my shifts at Disney. They come walking up to get a picture and I knew I didn't smell real good. Ooh, this photographer's ripe! But guests were always gracious about it. In fact, Disney in particular, I would actually keep an extra stick of deodorant with me a lot of times. And when I went to lunch break, it wasn't unusual for me to go in and sneak a couple extra swipes just to try to help head it off a little bit. But it didn't always work. You just come home and you know you've been covered in sweat and you have to take a shower. Another one that a lot of cast members struggle with is strollers and wheelchairs. Now, I've been a parent with a big stroller. I actually had a couple times where I had to scoot around the parks in a wheelchair. I had been getting treated for cancer and I didn't have the strength to walk around or get around. And we met up with the Florida Coaster Club one time and I got pushed around in a wheelchair with them. And another time I was out with my wife and rented a scooter because it was the only way I could visit. So I know what it is like to be in the chairs and have the people that walk in front of you and then just stop or don't pay attention and you have to barely avoid hitting them. I understand that frustration. But I also know that there are a whole lot of people with strollers and wheelchairs that can't seem to see anything around them and just plow right into people. They don't pay attention, and it's not good from either view. I would watch a number of people get run over by wheelchairs because the people in the chair hadn't been paying attention, or the person walking hadn't been paying attention. It was especially bad at Christmas. Christmas, a lot of us that were out on the streets expected to have our ankles bruised and run into multiple times a day. We could be standing there not moving, making a lot of noise, and this was actually one of the reasons when I was a photographer I made a decent amount of noise so people would see me and not hit me, especially if I was in the process of taking pictures of people because I didn't want to get hit. But people would just come right on up and slam into the back of you. Stroller into your ankles, wheelchair into your ankles, got knocked over a couple times, and people were like, "Oh, where'd you come from?" Well, I was standing there the whole time. We would just get used to having our ankles bruised and cut, and we had a number of photographers that walk around with permanent bandages in the back of their ankles because people with chairs and strollers didn't see them and ran right into them. Another thing that I personally hated at the parks was the drunks. This wasn't a problem at all at Silver Dollar City where there was no drinking. But at Busch Gardens, which was owned by a beer company, yeah, we would have it sometimes, especially towards the end of the day, and then you'd watch people get sick on something simple like Rhino Rally, which didn't do anything to your stomach, so it was obviously not the ride. Disney would have it some, not at Magic Kingdom, but Epcot did some, especially around the World Pavilion, where each different country would have drinks from that country. There were a number of people who thought one of the best parts was to drink their way around the world and sample something from each country, and by the time they get around, a lot of them are pretty well schnockered. Here's one of the things that a lot of these people think. Hey, I'm more fun when I'm drunk. No, you're not. A lot of times, those people, especially at the end of the day, not only would they reek of the alcohol, and I'm sorry, drunks don't smell good. Turns your stomach. But their behavior was terrible. I had people threaten to start fights with me because I was just standing there with the camera. Of course, they couldn't stand up straight enough to throw a punch, let alone actually do anything. But they think that they're being real macho and intimidating to threaten a photographer because of the alcohol that they've been having all day. People would get sick because of how much they had to drink. People would behave very inappropriately towards other people. And just not pleasant. I watched far more drunks ruin times around them for their friends or for the people who happened to be around when they were showing off than I ever watched drunks actually make something more fun happen. It wasn't unusual for us to have to play damage control with them. Now, I'm not a drinker, but if you're going to go to a park and you've got a drink, please keep it in moderation so that you are still you and not whatever that other thing is. Limit it, and that way everybody around you will have a better time. If you can't control how much you drink, please don't go to a theme park and drink. Probably the biggest struggle that you would have working in theme parks is dealing with other guests. The vast majority of guests were wonderful. 98% guests were great. They were fun, they were loving, but you did have those guests that seemed intent on ruining the day, either for themselves, their family, or the people around them. And I've documented several of these type of guests, whether on the 5 types of annoying guests or some of the stupid guest questions. The good news was, almost every time, the guest was going to be there, and then when they were done making the pain in the neck of themselves, they'd be gone, and you could move right back on to the rest of the good guests. But there were some that you just couldn't get rid of, that they had to ruin somebody's day, and you were the one that they had picked. I don't understand why people, if they're in a bad mood, decide that they have to ruin the day for everybody else. Especially if they're at a place where people are supposed to be having fun. And a lot of times, these guests thought that they were being really cool or macho or sophisticated. Look at me and how cool I am. Yeah, you're being a jerk. Stop it. Why do people want to be a jerk at the park? I don't know, but some insist that it's a good thing, and it's not. They would be the ones that you just really wanted to hit sometimes, but you couldn't do it. Rules don't apply to them. Attitudes don't apply. They can do whatever they want. They can talk to you however they want. And it was those kinds of people that when you finally got done with them, you would probably give them the, "And I hope you have a magical day." Let me be straight and honest with you. Not every time you hear that is a bad thing. There are a lot of cast members who will say, "Have a magical day," and they will mean it. They really want you to have a wonderful, happy, magical day. But it is also definitely one of those expressions that is said through gritted teeth sometimes at the guests that have gotten on your nerves, and is basically a way of saying, "I don't like you." So yes, if you were ticked at a guest, you might say that. That's a lot of the things that I really didn't like. There were a couple other things here and there. You'd have an occasional bad cast member employee that would drive you nuts, or a clueless manager, or maybe something that wasn't working the way it should have worked, and, maintenance issues happen. And yes, when maintenance issues continue to happen and they don't get fixed, yeah, that would get on your nerves. But thankfully, the things I didn't like were small and rare, and you could get over those. Now, if you got hung up on them, yeah, you could let it ruin your day or your week or your whole time working. And there were some people who just couldn't get over things. There were some people who just couldn't manage to get over dealing with rotten, stupid jerks who appeared sometimes. And that was part of the job. But for the most part, my time working at the parks was a wonderful time. And great enough that the little things that I didn't like really didn't compare to all the things I did like in the end. I love my time at Disney. I love my time at Busch and Silver Dollar City. And if I could, I'd do it again. So yeah, if you work at a park or whatever job you work at, don't let the little things get to you. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this look at some of the not so good things about working at parks. Hope it gave you a little bit of insight as to what it was actually like working. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and share the video. Spread the word about it. Comment below. Post on media. Don't forget to check out my Reddit page as well as my Facebook page too. I'd love to hear from you there. Thank you again to my patrons for supporting me. I so appreciate you. Thanks for watching. But particularly at Epcot, where all the World Pavilions had different drinks from that, where all the world, and hope it inspired you to look for some things. I hope you enjoy.